Well, welcome into another edition of Talkin Ducks. We're going to get through this one together. We'll recap Oregon losing to Washington in the Pac-12 championship game. Where does this rank as far as how stinging of a loss it was for the Ducks? We'll also talk about the travesty, the joke of the College Football Playoff Committee and how much they messed things up by leaving Florida State out. And then we'll take a look at this matchup against Liberty, an undefeated team coming into the Fiesta Bowl for Oregon. What does this look like? And then life after Bo Nix, the next step for Oregon as they make their move to the Big Ten Conference. But let's go ahead and get to our opening drive, brought to you by Capital Toyota. Your way on the highway. Here is Bo Nix after the loss to the Huskies.
Yeah, well, football is a tough game, and sometimes you put it all out there and you come up short. And, there at the end, it was just one of those things where you want the moment to last longer than what it can. And just even though we lost, it was one of those type of games that it was really fun to play in. And, it was just, a shocking end. It's tough when you're so used to go to where when it ends, it's like it just happens very quickly. And, I got all the respect in the world for Michael, and, he's played his butt off this year. I respect him a lot because I know how it is to play through some adversity, to play when you're not necessarily feeling your best. And he showed up tonight, and he did a really good job of making the explosive play when he needed it. And that just shows, what kind of team they are. They battled in a lot of games down the stretch, and they pulled them all out. And so that's a really good football team. And I think that's what sometimes hurts is when you put it all out there and it's still not good enough.
All right, we bring in the fellas here. Joey Harrington, Anthony Newman, and from the Oregonian, Aaron Fentress. And Joey, I want to begin with you. I don't want to use hyperbole here too much, but this felt like one of the most disappointing losses in Oregon football history when you look at everything that was potentially on the table for the Ducks. And just a sick feeling after this one, to be completely honest, not going to sugarcoat it. How did you take this game? How did you sort of respond to what we saw this weekend against Washington?
Well, you said a couple things. Worst loss, I think Michael Dyer, I think Cardale Jones. I think you probably have to put, Michael Penix and Rome Odunze in that mix. The thing is, as I sat there, so there's two things. One is I sat there and tried to think about it. If there was a moment where you were like, oh, well, they screwed up this play, or they weren't prepared in this situation, or they should have done this better, or they should have schemed them this way. There wasn't. They just got beat. And sometimes that happens. They got pushed around by Washington's offensive line and Washington's defensive line. And that's something that hasn't happened to Oregon all season. It wasn't a scheme. It wasn't a preparation. They just got beat. And it sucks.
Yeah.
That's how you put it. But I think, in listening to Bo talk afterwards, at least personally, I felt that. He was voicing what I felt 20 years ago, right? I grew up wanting to win a national championship. I didn't grow up wanting to go to the NFL. I grew up wanting to play in the Rose Bowl and win a national championship. And to get so close and have it just taken away right at the very end is a really frustrating thing to go through. But Bo's perspective and what you heard him say, is so absolutely spot on. The good that will come from this, what you learn, the type of person you become afterwards, at the long run, that's where you have to sit. Now, right now, screw that stuff. It sucks. You don't want to sit there and say, oh, well, you know what? In 10 years, I'll feel better. No, it sucks right now. But to hear Bo talk the way he did after the game, If that guy who truly put everything on the line and represented this team and this university the way that he did week in and week out, if he can sit there and have that perspective, then you know what? I think we should too. We can acknowledge that it stinks. You got beat. But you know what? There are other things that we can move on to, like the transfer portal.
Yeah, we'll get to that here in a little bit, but the eulogy kind of continues here for a moment. Anthony, I mean, this game, you're sitting here, you're watching this, you've got a different eye than we all do, especially from the defensive perspective. What did you see, and why did it make it such a frustrating game or disappointing game to watch afterwards when you saw everything that Oregon had been capable of the weeks leading up to it?
Well, you're disappointed because there's a football team out there that you like, that you care for, and they got beat. And it's real simple, guys. It's just, Jordan and Aaron, you're going to race in the 40. Jordan, you're going to kill Aaron. You're going to beat him.
If I give him a head start.
That's assuming both of our hamstrings hold up, first of all. Let's be real here.
Well, there's nothing Aaron can do to win that race. So in this football game, I'm talking about this football game, not the other
BB to the
game.
calf.
Okay, yeah. But in this football game.
You still have Tanya Harding's phone number, Aaron?
In this football game, Washington was the better team. And Joey said it. Hey, up front, Oregon got pushed around. And you didn't see that all year. From an offensive standpoint, defensive standpoint, they got pushed around. They got hit in the mouth, and they weren't ready for it. They didn't punch back. They tried, but it didn't work. The running game for Washington, wow. I mean, Dylan Johnson just went off. And Oregon said, we got to stop the running game. And they couldn't stop the running game. So sometimes it happens when the better team, they're going to win. Good teams win some football games. Great teams win all their games. And Washington right now is a great team because they're undefeated. They find ways to win. If it's ugly, if it's pretty, if they're trailing or they're killing a team, they find ways to win football games, and they beat Oregon.
Aaron.
Yeah. So you guys made fun of me in my plow. You made fun of my plow analogy, but my point was they ran the ball. They plowed the football down Washington's throats in the first game, and in this game right away. And remember, I was talking about who's going to adjust. Is Washington going to figure out a way to stop that? And right away on the first two drives, boom, they're trying to run up the middle, and it's getting stuffed. It's like, uh-oh. And they could never fix that. And so once they couldn't really run on Washington, okay, now the offense is stalled. And then Penix got rolling those first two drives. And we learned really quickly that style points and margin of victory against common opponents can be absolutely worth it. Because let's face it, the country fell for that. Because that's why the point spread was 9.5 when Washington had won the first meeting. It was all because of the score against Arizona State and against Oregon State and all these other teams. But none of that mattered when these two teams got on the field together. The better team won. So some of the disappointment is manufactured because there was an expectation that, Oregon's way better than Washington. We're going to beat them because look at the Arizona State score. But that didn't matter to Washington. Washington believed it was better. They proved they were better again. And at the end of the day, all you can say as a Duck fan is that Washington was just flat out a little bit better. Such is life.
Fentress.
Well, how do you explain then the difference in those games? Is that just Washington's approach to these games and they're getting bored, or is it just a legitimate matchup? Sometimes one teams are better fit to play another team. Is this a situation when you've got Penix in these receivers against Oregon and a very thin secondary that had some injuries and not necessarily the best cover players at the safety position?
I can't explain it. I mean,
I can explain it.
But it's always been a fallacy that...
Okay, Joey, no, Aaron, if you can't explain it, Joey gets to talk. Joey gets to talk if you can't explain it.
If Team A beats Team B and B beats Team C, that doesn't mean A is going to beat C. That's how sports work. So there's no logical explanation, really. But Joey can try.
Yes, there is.
Yeah.
No, there
isn't. Here's how you try. Sometimes you can come out and feel very prepared and feel like you're going to you've got everything covered, and then you step onto the field and your first throw comes out of your hands and it ends up in the 4th row of the stands. And it's like, what the hell is like,
or hits the umpire.
And then you try and correct, and then you try and fix, and then you tweak, and then all of a sudden by halftime, it's like, what the hell's going on here? And then your coach says you don't have to wait until the 4th quarter to start playing well. And then you figure it out, and then you end up beating the team because you're better than them. But those first 3 quarters, sometimes it just doesn't happen. And I don't know why, but sometimes you can throw for 420 and 6 touchdowns, and sometimes you can throw for 123 and fumble. And that's just sports. But if you win your games, then you end up where you want to be at the end. It doesn't matter if you win by 2 or you win by 32.
Not necessarily if you win all your games, by the way.
We'll
just
point.
Get to that here a little
Unless
bit
you're Florida State.
At the end of the day, it does feel like, and let's get the final thought from you here, Anthony. It just felt like Washington won their matchups against Oregon, right? The areas where Washington was stronger, they played much better. The areas where you think Oregon was stronger, they didn't. And it came down to a couple of key plays potentially, right? You don't know if that Penix fumble is ruled a fumble. That changes everything. If Bo doesn't think the player's out of bounds, either way, it's such a tight margin between these two teams. It just felt like not enough of those plays went the way of Oregon.
Well, you still, when you look at this game, Oregon still had a chance to win this football game, just like the last time they played. They had chances, but they didn't finish. But here's one thing, when you talk about matchups, what I saw from Washington's offense and Oregon's defense, the receivers for Washington are dudes. They're going to be playing in the NFL, okay? And you usually don't have enough DBs to cover when they got 3 receivers on an offensive group. Do you have 3 DBs that can cover those guys? Normally you don't. So what you have to do is you got to get pressure to the quarterback. You have to make the quarterback throw the ball sooner than he wants to, or off his one leg, bad passes. But that didn't happen because what they were doing is they were max protecting, sending 3 receivers, keeping the tight end in the block from time to time, keep the running back in the block, and the running back was doing a great job. Dylan Johnson was doing a great job of picking up the blitzing linebacker. And then now you have a receiver who has time to run a route against a DB that he's going to beat every time. And that happened.
All right. Stick around when we come back. Plenty more Talkin Ducks. We'll talk about this matchup against Liberty. Should you be excited, or is there more than meets the eye? We'll let you know when we come back. You're watching Talkin Ducks, built by Par Lumber. Welcome back to Talkin Ducks. It's time now for Talkin Numbers, brought to you by Par Lumber. Oregon taking on number 23, Liberty. They are from Lynchburg, Virginia. The Flames, 13-0 record in 2023, did not play a Power 5 team, though. They did beat New Mexico State 49-35 in the Conference USA title game. The same New Mexico State that went and punched Auburn in the mouth and beat them in Auburn, by the way. It's the first New Year's Six bowl berth in school history and conference history. They are 3-1 in bowl games since joining FBS in 2018. Aaron, the number of text messages I got from friends that just said, great, Liberty, this is what we get for losing to Washington and having this type of season, a matchup against Liberty in Arizona. A huge wave of disappointment, it felt like, from Duck fans, especially when you saw the other matchups that some of these Pac-12 schools are playing, Aaron. You got Arizona, Oklahoma, Oregon taking on Notre Dame. Is it right for Duck fans to feel disappointed in this matchup? No disrespect to Liberty and what they've done this year, but come on, I mean, facts are facts there, and they didn't play a Power 5 school.
It's piling on. It was just adding insult to injury. The Duck Nation is already distraught over losing to UW of all teams twice, to lose out on a chance at your quarterback maybe win the Heisman and you going to the playoffs. But at least, and I even tweeted like my top 4 matchups. I wanted to see them play Georgia or Ohio State or Penn State. I think it had Penn State, Florida State or whatever. Some kind of marquee name, right, to make it intriguing. And then it's Liberty. And no disrespect to Liberty. Those kids are going to come out hungry. They're going to come out to play. Hey, Boise State beat Oklahoma and Adrian Peterson many years ago. That's one of the more famous Fiesta Bowls ever, I think, right? Tulane beat USC last year, but USC doesn't have a defense. So, don't completely disrespect. And it's only 14. It's not 24 or 34. It's only a 14-point spread. So this is going to be a semi-dangerous team. But yeah, it is not sexy at all. Any Oregon fan who goes to this game deserves some kind of plaque for being a prime-time fan, because there's not much incentive to really want to go there unless you're just so diehard you want to watch this, your Bo Nix play. But it's just another example of how stupid the structure of college football continues to be, because the group of 5 thing was put in for a deserving team like a Boise State that maybe goes 12-1 or 13-0 and beat some Power 5 teams along the way, where you say, yeah, that team's really good. Not a Liberty team. I think they're ranked 18th or 20th, and it didn't play one.
23rd.
That rule should have had another clause to it where you can shift it, because this is unfair to Oregon completely and to college football fans. College football fans don't want to watch this. Again, no offense to Liberty, although I'm being offensive, but it's just not right.
No. Anthony.
Well, I think everybody's going to say, no disrespect to Liberty. They keep saying that.
And then disrespect.
You're going to have plenty of locker room material, by the way. Let's just start with that. They're going to have no shortage of things to pin up on the bulletin board. They might throw our mugs up there even too.
Here's the thing. Dan Lanning and his staff, they're going to get their team ready to play. Because Coach Lanning is going to tell those kids, we don't want to be the one. We don't want to be the one to say, Liberty beat us in the Fiesta Bowl. Not happening. And for me, it's a no-win situation for Oregon. If you win, you're supposed to win. You're supposed to beat them by 60. If you lose, you guys, you're overrated. Are you kidding me? So it's a very tough situation. But from a football standpoint of the guys playing, Coach Lanning is going to get those guys ready to go. And
Anthony, even if you win by 14, you're overrated. Like, you literally have to win this game by 5 touchdowns for it to be considered, well, that's what they should have done in the first place. And the reality is, yes, Bo has said that he's playing. There will be players in this game that are impact players for the Ducks that choose not to play.
Yeah.
This is not going to be a full-strength Oregon football team. And as much as we would all like it to be, and I could be wrong. And if I'm wrong, then, hey, more power to those guys. And this is going to be a full-strength Duck team, and we should beat them by 136. But I would guess that this is a 14-point spread in Vegas right now, because they are banking on some of these guys not playing. And when and you get, you know how it is, Anthony, as a coach, you get that next guy in, you get the new guy in who hasn't been in that situation before, who's maybe running a route that Bo's expecting to be over here, but instead he's over there. Like, those are the little things that lead to 3 and outs. Those are the little things that lead to a ball off the face mask and an interception. Those are the little things that keep teams like Liberty in the game. So this is an absolute no-win situation, because unless you literally steamroll, unless you plow that, Fentress, you made me think with that plow. Like, I was like, call Mr. Plow, that's my name, But see, then, so Homer comes out as like Mr. Plow, but then comes Barney, is like, I'm the Plow King, and then and comes through and crushes it all. So unless you're the Plow King, you're still not going to be good enough.
Wow. We've gotten a lot out of that plow thing. Y'all, I need a bonus, Jordan. That's the kind of comedic genius I'm paid for.
And I will say this as far as who's not playing. As someone that got hurt in their bowl game senior year, I will sit outside of Troy Franklin's hotel room to make sure he does not take the field in this game, to go make sure he stays healthy for the NFL draft. But regardless of this outcome, Aaron, this is, a lot of people felt like the sport of college football, whatever was left of the purity or whatever its carcass was.
There's no purity left.
That's what I'm saying. Like, whatever shred was remaining, completely just blown up with the committee's decision to put Alabama, to put Texas in ahead of undefeated Florida State.
I disagree.
Okay.
So here's the thing. When you have a completely flawed system, people are going to get screwed in that system. It's inevitable, right? And college football has a history of blowing it on so many different levels, because the playoffs didn't come until recently, and before that, the BCS. I still talk to
what happened with the BCS, Aaron? I don't know about that. I don't know about the BCS. What happened there?
I still talk to Husky fans saying I think the Miami Hurricanes in '91 would beat the '91 Huskies, and they pushed back at me. Well, you know what? We shouldn't be talking about it 30 years later. It should have happened. So you create a system that's flawed, you're going to have problems. And they should have abandoned this system before this year, and they didn't. for financial reasons and hubris reasons or whatever. And so here we are. That said, does anyone really believe Florida State without their quarterback, beats Texas, Bama, or Georgia? I don't. So, come on. Okay, maybe you do, but that's fine. But here's the thing. So Georgia has one loss. The one loss is to Bama, and Georgia's a 2-time champions. Georgia steamrolls Florida State. Florida State doesn't even have a marquee win on their resume, yet they're 13-0. But who'd they beat? Texas beat Bama. Bama beat Georgia. That group of teams is just flat out better than Florida State, especially without their quarterback. And their two quarterbacks they've been playing, one threw for 50 yards, and the other one, the previous game, completed 48% of their passes. So the goal is to pick the best 4 teams. The very idea that you're picking instead of deciding on the field is stupid to begin with. So you can't really argue that it's stupid when you already know it's stupid. Therefore, they picked the right teams because Bama, Texas, and Georgia, who's not even in it, Ohio State even, Oregon even, beat up on Florida State without its quarterback.
Jordan, come to me next.
Go ahead. What?
Joey, let's go to you next.
Okay, thanks. Okay. You've made a very correct statement at the beginning, which the system is flawed. You have five conference champions and you only have spots for 4 of them. That's flawed from the beginning. However, your argument is also flawed because you're making a decision based on a result that you are assuming is going to happen in a game that hasn't been played.
But that's
and
what
you
they
say,
do.
well,
That's
there's no, I gave you your time to talk.
Let him talk, Aaron.
So you say there's no way that a team that's on their 3rd string quarterback deserves to be in the college football playoff because they can't win a game. You're right. Because when Oregon played in the national championship in 2014 against Ohio State, they had their starting, they had their backup. They had their 3rd string quarterback and they went on to win a national championship. But you say, you know what? The Ohio State team is completely different than the Florida State team because Florida State plays in a conference that is simply not as good as the Big Ten. Because when the ACC went head to head against the SEC this year, they got steam. Wait, no what? The ACC had a winning record against the SEC this year? I'm sorry, I didn't realize. So, okay, fine. Then you move on to the head-to-head stuff because the Florida State didn't actually play teams from the SEC. Oh, they did. Oh, okay. So at the start of the season, they beat the presumptive Heisman Trophy winner. Oh, okay, good. Held them to his smallest day output of the. Okay, gotcha. So defensively, they're really good. Gotcha. So then, but I get it. Once they got their backup quarterbacks in and played an SEC team, they probably got. Oh no, they beat Florida with their backup quarterback.
Florida.
Okay. And so then they went on with their 3rd string quarterback to lose in the championship game against the top 25. Oh no, they didn't. So, but I guess the 3rd string quarterback is going to play the rest of the game because the 2nd string guy is out for the rest of the. Oh no, who's supposed to come back too? Got it. So, no thanks.
Okay, I need to respond to that. Hold on a second. First of all, the Jones argument is DOA because he was actually good. If they had a Cardell Jones, then it'd be a different conversation.
Are you saying that the backup quarterback at Florida State isn't good?
They threw for 55 yards last week, and then against North Alabama, the other kid completed 48% of his passes. That's apples and oranges. That's not even in the same stratosphere. Of course, I never said Florida State didn't deserve to be in it. There's 6 or 7 teams that deserve to be in it. We can sit here all day and go through all the different reasons why a bunch of teams should be or a bunch of teams shouldn't be. But when you have to make a choice like they have to make, they made the right choice because the undefeated team is not as okay. Would they be undefeated without Travis? No, they would have lost.
They made a decision.
They don't have a quarterback. Just like with the Ducks, when the Ducks lost Dennis Dixon, what happened? They fell to pieces. When Burmeister
But Florida State didn't fall to pieces. They won the rest of their games. They didn't fall to pieces. They won the rest of their football games.
They didn't.
Florida State did. Florida State did.
Right. They won their last 2 games against North Alabama and Florida.
And the conference championship game.
3 games.
No.
Against Louisville.
Right. But, okay, again, they passed for 50 yards.
They won. It doesn't matter.
But
we just Aaron, you just led the discussion with the Oregon Washington.
You think Florida State has a chance against Ohio State, Oregon, Georgia, or
Alabama.
Yes,
you just led the discussion that said it doesn't matter how you win. We just talked about this Oregon-Washington. You said it doesn't matter how you win, but the fact that you do win. So Washington's 15-7 win over Arizona State is just as good as a blowout win against anybody else. So by that logic, Florida State winning a close game against Louisville, by that logic, is just as good as any other win and should put them in.
Okay, that's fine. But literally in the committee criteria, it says if key players are lost, that can play a factor. So let's say Oregon had won and Bo Nix was out, and they had to start Ty Thompson. Oregon might not have been invited. It does matter. And the betting line, what's the betting line on Georgia, Florida State right now? Let's look at that.
But what was the betting line on Washington or against Michigan TCU last year? And that's what the committee is trying to.
TCU didn't lose its quarterback.
TCU went out and beat Michigan as a massive underdog and then got their clock cleaned.
With their quarterback.
But then got their clock cleaned against Alabama. And the committee is using that dud of a championship game to say, well, Florida State would still provide us a dud, and then we're going to keep them out, which is within their right. Aaron, I'm not saying it's not in their right to do. You're right. In the bylaws, in the few rules that they do have, they can do that. Go back to the first thing that we both agreed on, the system is flawed. We have to go to break.
That's all I meant.
Yep. And Aaron's
Anthony, great segment, my man.
I got nothing to say.
Yeah, it's terrible. I think the 12-team playoff couldn't come soon enough. There will always be a team outside of 12 looking in, but at least, a team at 13 has less of a claim than a team at 5, 6, and 7, but there'll still be some arguing. But either way, I think the committee got it wrong. Aaron, I think you make some good points, but at the end of the day, it's last year we have to deal with it. All right, stick around when we come back. We got to talk about life after Bo Nix for Oregon, plus he's a Heisman Trophy finalist. What does that mean for him moving forward? Plenty more Talkin Ducks when we come back. You're watching Talkin Ducks, built by Par Lumber. Welcome back. Time now for our legendary performance brought to you by Abby's Legendary Pizza. And it's Bo Nix. He was recently selected as a Heisman Trophy finalist and also just moments ago named Pac-12 Offensive Player of the Year, which is saying a lot considering you're in the same conference as Michael Penix. But you take a look at this season here, and let's start with you, Joey. You're the most qualified to answer this question. It really was something special we saw from Bo Nix, and Oregon's been spoiled at this position, especially ever since you were under center. You look at what he did. What stood out to you the most about this past season? What impressed you the most about what he put together?
Two things, one of which I'll credit Fentress for talking about after last season, was his ability to improve. Like, you looked at him at the end of last season and was like, well, what could he possibly improve on? He got better as a pocket passer. Like, he sat in there and threw some balls that were NFL caliber throws. I mean, it was fantastic. And he did it by sliding in the pocket. He did it by moving and finding space. Whereas last year he bailed out and, made those plays on the run. This year he sat in there and not only completed those passes, but upped his completion percentage, right? So if I'm looking at one thing that he improved on and is impressive, it's that. But for me, and the reason why I'm guessing that the rest of the voters put him over Penix is because literally from week to week, game to game, quarter to quarter, like, there was nobody more consistent. Penix was phenomenal, had an incredible season. But there were a couple games where, it's like, it's getting a little dicey. Never. Even in the crummy first quarter Bo had against Washington in this last game, he still brought him back to give him a lead with 5 minutes left to go in the fourth quarter. Like, he put that behind him and played fantastic football. Like, there wasn't a moment during this season where I thought to myself, man, Bo's struggling. Like, I don't know that I've ever been able to say, like, I've thought about this. Like, I'm trying. Like, Leinart had some. Leinart had a crummy game against Cal and Aaron Rodgers that game. There were games where Tebow wasn't incredibly spectacular. Maybe Danny Werfel, like, just putting up the numbers. Like, but to be this consistently productive and efficient and effective and explosive, like, all those things are very different. But he did it all every single game, and that was the most impressive thing to me.
Aaron, Let's compare Bo Nix to Caleb Williams from last year, just for fun and to get some comments going. Do you think he had a better season than what we saw with Caleb Williams when you talk about his efficiency and Williams being the Heisman Trophy winner last year?
Oh, I'd have to go look back at Caleb's numbers, but I mean, I don't even think I have to look back. Yeah, I mean, his numbers are insane. The 78%, I've said this before, that's Jedi stuff. Like that literally shouldn't be a thing. That's where if I see my son up 85-10 in Madden, I'm like, dude, come on, get off rookie level. Right? That's how I felt about Penix sometimes, or Nix. And I'm looking at his game log, and the 3 games where he threw picks, he only threw picks in 3 games. He also threw 10 touchdowns, right? And for almost 1,000 yards. So he did not have not just didn't have a bad game, he didn't have any mediocre games. They were all really, really good to amazing. And some of them he only played, really a half or into the third quarter maybe. So yeah, offensive player of the year by far. Penix has more arm talent, I think. I mean, the throws he makes are just like stupid. They remind me of Warren Moon. I'll name another Washington quarterback, just absolute laser beams all over the place, right? But he did have some games where you're like, well, with these receivers and that arm, how are you guys not just dominating this team? And why are you having such a subpar game? Whereas with Bo, that was never the case. And to his credit, in this last game, they're down 20-3, and you're just kind of waiting. And then boom, he explodes, and they take off and they come back. So yeah, absolutely amazing season. The only better statistical season in Oregon history still is Marcus Heisman, but that's it.
And it's funny, Aaron, because despite Bo's individual effort against Washington, people say he lost the Heisman that game. And he will still have a team that finished with a better record than Jayden Daniels, put up more passing yards. It's just, again, we go to the system. This is very interesting to me. What's your take on that?
The reason why there's a lot of voters is because you're going to get a lot of different opinions and people's different value systems, right? And I can't get past the 1,100 yards rushing along with the better passer rating than the other 2 guys. And I did vote for Jayden Daniels. I voted Nix second.
Ooh, get off this show. Go.
I voted Nix second because I think he had the better all-around season than Penix, but Penix went 13-0. But I don't always buy into that because it's a team thing still. And Lamar Jackson and Tebow went 9-3. They won the Heisman. So, everyone's going to have their own view, and that's just how it is. But if you take Jayden Daniels, you put him on Oregon's still in the same position. Same thing with Washington and vice versa, et cetera, et cetera. It's really tough to pick between the 3. I think you can go either way. But for me, the better passer rating plus the 1,100 yards rushing, that's just a different beast.
Here's the thing, Jordan. You said the question was framed how he lost the Heisman. He had an opportunity in front of the country to unequivocally say that he's better than Michael Penix, right? And they lost, right? And it didn't happen. Now, what happens in the Heisman voting is now he's likely going to split. There's going to be shared votes along the West, whether it's Bo or it's Penix, or then you kind of split there. And it allows the argument, which Aaron makes, to bring Jayden Daniels in and make a case for him, which I think, I wouldn't necessarily, if I was voting, based on the full body of work, I still wouldn't vote that way. I would still put Bo 1, Jayden 2, but I can't fault somebody for voting the other way, the other way around, because there was an opportunity to stamp it, to say this is mine, get the hell out of my way, and it didn't happen. And
not
so,
necessarily his own fault individually, of course, collectively.
It's a team sport.
I do want to get to life after Bo Nix, though, and Anthony, you've been patient this whole segment. I'm sorry, my friend. Oregon next year. Dylan Gabriel, his name, transfer from Oklahoma, has been linked to Oregon. It's been reported that Oregon is the front runner, USC the backup. Should Oregon go transfer portal? Do you try and give Ty Thompson a look in this game against Liberty? What do you think Oregon needs to do here?
Well, this is a different game today. I guess you can. It's free agency. I mean, come on. It's kind of crazy. Back in the day, you would develop these young quarterbacks and you get them as a freshman, and then you go through and they'll get in some time playing as a sophomore, and then junior, senior year, they'll come out and they'll play. you don't have to do that anymore. You can go, okay, let's look at the numbers. Okay, and how much do we need to pay him? And it's wild. I say this though, you can't replace Bo Nix. Okay, it's just like Marcus. You can't replace Marcus. You can't replace Joey. They come around only every so often. Okay, so you need you need a guy that's good.
I know, Anthony.
What's that?
I was gonna say a player like Joey only comes around like 4 times in 20 years. So I'm playing.
Yeah, I mean, the guy who, he can throw the ball over the place, he can run, he ran a 4.240. Joey's the man. But anyway, he's looking at me like, wait, what? No.
4.230.
Yeah.
I'm looking at my stopwatch. I'm like, where are we getting those?
It's not only just the quarterback position. You need that supporting cast because Bo Nix, he was great his first year, but he still had some struggles. This year, he was lights out. He was like a coach on the field. And I keep saying that because I used to, when I was playing, my coach would give me this information. And I'm like, man, if I just knew everything the coach knew, I need to be a coach and play the game. That would be great. I would be unstoppable. But Bo was a coach playing the game. He became a coach. He played like it was effortless when he was playing the game. So it was fun to watch. Those guys don't come around. You can't replace those guys.
They really don't.
There's some guys who can play. Yeah, you'll bring them in, but it's not going to be the same.
Here's the thing. So I'm not saying Joey would have done this, but a player in Joey's position when he was competing with Feely, losing that job to start the season, right? He's out. Someone's going to come steal him. He's gone. He's not going to develop and wait and bide his time and compete. He's out. And that's a shame because also the programs with someone like Ty, if they might think Ty is a B quarterback right now, but I can go get an A. And an A is available because there's no loyalty. And so you're going to go get the A also because fans and ADs don't want to see a team take a step back while they're developing. No, you better win 10 games again. So now you got to go get that quarterback from someone else. And I said this last summer, I think, if I'm Oregon, I'd put minimal effort into recruiting a quarterback. I sign one just in case I get lucky and hit on a Marcus or hit on a Herbert, right? But I'm scanning the country every offseason with $1.5 million in my backpack and going, I like you. 1.5 million and a statue in Manhattan. Forget a billboard. I'm gonna build a stat. That kid's coming. He's gonna get exposure. He's gonna put up stats. He's gonna get drafted. He's gonna win. You can cherry pick from Division II to FBS to anywhere in the country except maybe 10 programs. And you can just build your quarterback situation that way. And then the freshmen who come in, Ty Thompson's gonna leave. Is Austin gonna leave? I mean, who knows what's gonna happen? But that's just the way of the future. It's disgusting and makes me want to puke in a lot of ways, but it's also just the way it is.
Yeah. Well, it's the new normal, and we'll try to get used to that. When we come back, we're going to go ahead and hear from Dan Rubenstein from the Solid Verbal. We'll hear his thoughts on the college football playoff in this matchup against Liberty. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back on Talkin Ducks. You're watching Talkin Ducks, built by Par Lumber. Welcome back to Talkin Ducks. Time now for It Never Rains with our good friend Dan Rubenstein from the Solid Verbal. And Dan, like a lot of Duck fans, is a very disappointing weekend. Of course, the loss to Washington, but then for all the hard work that Oregon put in this year, and 11 wins, a rarity in an Oregon regular season, and the way that this team played, the wave of disappointment, no disrespect to Liberty. This is a very good team. We'll get to them here in a second. But the disappointment that people felt when they saw Oregon in the Fiesta Bowl taking on Liberty, the highest ranked group of 5 team. Your thoughts on this matchup and this reward for the Ducks at the end of this season?
Yeah, if you can separate pointing out that Liberty had a tremendous year with a high-flying offense and a really interesting coach in Jamie Chadwell, who did great things at Coastal Carolina, the expectation was win or lose because of Oregon's season and how many teams at the top of this sport had done so much to earn a big game at the end of the year. Obviously, Florida State, and that's a whole other conversation, left out of the playoff. But, the consolation is a shot at Georgia, whatever that means. And you have Ohio State at the top, Penn State, Mizzou, Ole Miss, like all these high-level teams who had terrific seasons. And there is always going to be that element of somebody's going to have to play the G5 team. You know, if you remember Western Michigan, a great story a few years ago with PJ Fleck, they play Wisconsin. And it's just always going to be sort of a come down because of the nature of the high level programs having huge years. So for me as an Oregon homer, a sort of sad Oregon homer after the Washington game, it was an even bigger and more pronounced come down that, and my immediate thought was Bo Nix was done. But it was a come down that Oregon would not have that chance to put an emphatic statement over an interesting team after an otherwise terrific season taking out the Washington games.
Yeah, it was really just a disheartening weekend, not only if you were a Duck fan, but just a fan of college football. We all know that, listen, this is not necessarily the purest sport, that there is always going to be some decisions made behind the scenes, and really it pales in comparison to the true competitive nature of, say, the NCAA tournament for basketball. But what we saw this weekend, Dan, with the College Football Playoff Committee and an undefeated Florida State, Power 5 school, they go 13-0, being leapfrogged by two teams with losses, and obviously Alabama getting in and knocking Florida State out of there, it just felt like something died this weekend. Whatever shred of legitimacy that this sport had felt like it flew out the window. I mean, am I overreacting and thinking that way, or is there something that just feels like there's been a monumental shift in something here?
No, it just felt like a choice. It didn't feel like it was rooted in anything significant beyond we wanted to put Alabama in. We think Alabama is better, but that doesn't really line up. That doesn't really align with how we've ranked teams traditionally, how we view undefeated teams in power conferences. And in a tiny detail that I think got lost a little bit is Florida State finished ahead of Georgia, did they not?
Yep.
So Florida State finishes, so if Florida State is such a different team without Jordan Travis, right? They couldn't possibly be considered a top 4 team when compared against 12-1 Alabama, who lost all those weeks ago and didn't lose in the SEC. But the two-time national champ, who's recruited on a crazy level, who was number 1 for the majority of the season, who came into the week 12-0 number 1, well, they're not as good as Florida State.
I know.
Right? So how are we actually evaluating this? Like, is your true opinion that Florida State is just a number 11 team without Jordan Travis? Put him at number 11. So there's nothing to go on here. And so I really do. It really was a huge blow against the idea that results matter.
I did laugh that on ESPN before they revealed the rankings, the last commercial they played was the SEC lives on ESPN. It was just some beautiful foreshadowing of what was about to be decided here. Not saying that like there's any connection there, but I'd be
lying. Of course not. And I don't know if you've noticed, ESPN has also been like, man, Florida State got left out. How do you guys feel about that?
I know, right?
On all of their social media channels. We were like, well, how do you feel about it, ESPN? I think that's what we want to know, because a lot of people were kind of selling this on your airwaves.
Oh, yeah. You saw that immediately, by the way, before they even had the show. Articles written that were putting Alabama in at number 4. Prominent analysts that you will see in major games for ESPN also banging the drum and saying, despite some of their tweets about their alma maters later, we'll let you put those pieces together. But then you go to the other aspect that has completely changed college football, and that is the transfer portal. And life after Bo Nix for Oregon, obviously a Heisman Trophy finalist. Whether or not he wins it, seems like that last performance hurt him. But moving forward for Oregon, that's the most important piece they have to replace. And now you've got a lot of quality quarterbacks out there. How does Oregon move on from Bo Nix? What's the next decision when you hear some of the rumors out there?
Very carefully, because this is a team that's built to continue to win on a high level. And so it's an evaluation of the quarterbacks currently on the roster. So that's Ty Thompson and Austin Novosad, the freshmen, and at least one quarterback coming in. I think one decommitted, but one quarterback coming in via the high school recruiting ranks. And there are, of course, rumors through the portal and connections. Dylan Gabriel has been the most recent name, as reported by Pete Thamel at ESPN. He's had an incredible career both at UCF and Oklahoma. If you remember, he briefly committed to UCLA from Hawaii, and so there seems to be that West Coast pull. Obviously, Marcus Mariota, a hero on the islands because of what he was able to accomplish in Eugene. Dylan Gabriel's a very efficient passer. He's an accurate passer. He's not a tall passer. He wasn't particularly good at inclement weather for Oklahoma, if you watch the Kansas game this year. But by and large, he was one of the best 7 quarterbacks in college football, something like that, for a very good team that beat a playoff team on a neutral field. So I don't think Oregon could have done much better. I know there was some Cam Ward scuttle early on in the process from Wazoo, and now he seems to be having some steam towards Columbus and Ohio State. But in terms of a white glove, ready-made quarterback, he's probably the best option to immediately step in and win double-digit games in 2024 for the Ducks.
All right, it's going to be a crazy offseason as always, but we'll catch up with you a few more times as we get set for this bowl game. And Dan, remind the folks where they can find you.
The Solid Verbal Podcast, either wherever you listen to podcasts or on YouTube at youtube.com/@solidverbal.
All right, my man. Stick around, everybody. When we come back, we'll give you our thoughts on this Fiesta Bowl matchup against Liberty. You're watching Talkin Ducks, built by Par Lumber. Welcome back to Talkin Ducks. Time now for Tools for Victory, brought to you by Leatherman. And fortunately for the Ducks this game against Liberty here, Joey, Bo Nix is the tool. We mean that as a big compliment because he said he's going to play in this game, which is surprising, but at the same time, as you know, Bo Nix, not very surprising at all. This is a huge impact, not only on the field, Joey, but also off the field as the team prepares, I imagine.
Yeah, I don't know. This is similar to like when Justin decided that he was coming back for his senior year, right? You know, there's just something about him as a person, something about Bo as a person that you knew that he wouldn't want to go out like that. And I think it's a huge get for Oregon and their team because he's going to be able to use that to help bring the other, like, hey, come on, guys, like we got to finish this out the right way. And hey, respect guys if they say no thanks. That's still not for me. You know, you had that personal experience, Jordan, but Bo is the linchpin for all of this, and a huge amount of respect for not just what he's done on the field, but the way he carries himself off as well.
Mm-hmm. Aaron, thoughts on Bo Nix coming back and early look at Liberty?
At first, when he said he wasn't sure, and I was kind of disappointed because I thought they were going to face, a marquee team in the big bowl, come back and finish it right. But, you kind of get the business side of it. But quarterbacks, I mean, a lot has to happen to you as a quarterback to really lose your draft prowess even with one injury. We saw that with Clemens and Dixon. But then when it was Liberty, I'm like, okay, Bo, go ahead and go pro, whatever. But the fact that he's playing is awesome. Like, it's great for the program. It's a great look. And I'm happy for him that he made that decision. He wants to be that guy to go out the right way. And I'm happy for Oregon. It's a good thing. It makes the bowl game palpable.
And Anthony, we're all washed up here. Let's be honest. How much would you give to just go strap it up one more time and take the field with your teammates?
Oh, man. I mean, you think about, and Joey, you can talk about this, and Jordan, you can too. Playing in the league, it's a little different. When you're playing it in college with your buddies, guys you're hanging out with, you're going to class with, it's a different story. So to play one more game with your guys, Bo's a competitor. He wants to compete with his guys. And it tells you how close his football team is. That, hey, no, I'm coming back for my guys. I'm going to help my guys, help myself win this last game, win the Fiesta Bowl. That's big time. And now maybe some other players might go, hey, I think I'll come back too because our leader's coming back. I'm going to come back. And then who's to say Bo might come back again next year? I don't know. No one knows. So
hey, who knows? But Bo knows. I don't think he can come back. I think he's been in college for 8 years. Either way, we got to get rolling. We're going to take a little bit of a break here with Talkin Ducks, but we'll be back to get you set before the Fiesta Bowl, Oregon versus Liberty, and then we'll have one more show to recap that bowl game. We'll get you all prepared for that. Thanks again for joining us. Make sure you catch the show on YouTube, and we'll see you in a few weeks. Happy holidays. Enjoy the Christmas, and we'll talk to you guys all soon.